Hi, and welcome back to John's Kitchen. Today we're going to do banana bread. Banana nut bread if you add nuts. I don't like to, so we're going to keep it basic. I do use the Betty Crocker New Cookbook on this because if you're a little off, it makes big changes which aren't good. First hint is use very ripe bananas on this. This is important because very ripe bananas mix up easier and they taste a lot better. And if you cook with a banana that has a little bit of a brown spot, you're not going to die from cancer the next day. I don't care what Sheryl Crow tells you. Now, another thing in here, I alter the recipe just a tad. I find that banana bread is a little bit heavy and it doesn't rise very good. It has no yeast. So it calls for 2 teaspoons of baking powder and a half a teaspoon of baking soda. If you want your bread a little bit fluffier, what you can do is, instead of 2 teaspoons of baking powder, go with like 2.5 of baking powder, and then instead of a half teaspoon of baking powder, go with a whole teaspoon. I'm going to go with that this time and see how it turns out. And I'll give you a little clue here. Whenever you're making banana bread, you put all your liquids in first, and then your bananas. Here goes the eggs. The reason for that is you don't want to end up with lumpy banana bread. Lumpy banana bread isn't much fun. Now, I use a Dortmeier blender, which is a real old-time blender, made in America, non-union. It's a great product, and I mentioned non-union because that was before our manufacturers got greedy and started squeezing the country to death and putting people out of work and putting our jobs in other countries. But this is a cooking station, not a political station. So it's a Dortmeier Silver Chef. And this thing is much older than I am. So we start with the liquids. We're going to go on low. So let's just put these bananas in here. One big lump. Power down a little bit. Start working that in. Next thing we want to put in is the sugar and baking sodas and what have you. And you want to put the flour in last. The reason why you want to put the sugar and the other stuff in next is because you want the grains of sugar to fully dissolve. And now the flour. Flour power. Now, we take our little bread pans and you fill one in the other. You get about everything but 1% out of your pan, which is acceptable. There we go. Almost exactly, precisely, kind of, sort of. And now those go into an oven at 350 degrees for 55 to 60 minutes. In they go. I always like to put my stuff on the top of the rack, woo-wee, at the very back of the oven. And we'll peek in there in about 15 minutes. And there you have it. Now, I must tell you, that is a beautiful piece of bread there. So what I do, I had to leave these in a little longer because I was unsure of the time. And I set my start time at the temperature of the oven, which is brilliant. So I had to overcook these to be a little bit sure. So what you do is while they're cooling, you cover them with foil, and you let those cool at room temperature, not in the refrigerator. And what this is going to do is it's going to re-moisturize the crust, or the rather hard outer shell. So after a couple hours, when this cools down, that bread's going to be really soft on top, like it should be. Otherwise, if I don't do this, you're going to end up with a very poor quality product. And we don't want that, do we? And I don't know if you noticed, but they are extra fluffy. And that's because I added about 20% more baking powder and baking soda. Now, a word of note here, when you use baking powder, you can use a little more, but you don't get as much lift. When you use baking soda, you get much more lift out of it, but the danger is that you can taste it. So for a little bit more fluffiness, you want to go maybe a little heavier on the baking powder, not quite so heavy on the baking soda, because like I said, the soda is kind of high in sodium, and that flavor will come through in the finished product. And there you have it, 2 fresh loaves of banana bread.